We're back with Plumbing Around. We're in life, and plumbing shit happens. Today, I'm excited. I'm here with John Broussard, one of the most interesting, deep, thoughtful, caring people I've met, and I'm super grateful we met. We met via an open mic that you host, and we'll get into that later, but amazing place, amazing time. I love it, but what do you do? What's your day job, your day passion?
Yeah. So that's interesting. So I most identify as a child humanitarian, and I believe that a child humanitarian is someone who simply tries to improve the life and living conditions of young people. So the car that I drive to make that happen, I work in education, and I've been in education for, gosh, I'm about to date myself here. 20 years, actually. This is year 20
All right.
Of education. Currently, I'm in year 10 as an athletic director and assistant principal at Marietta Mesa. Great school, newest school in the area. Definitely proud to be there. It's good people.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
And with that, what do you do?
Yeah.
And then what do you really do as
For
part
sure.
of your
On campus.
your purpose? Yeah.
Yeah. So my oversight is athletics, as well as being an assistant principal, but my main oversight is athletics. We have about 800 student athletes. Yes, we have about, 80 to 100 coaches, so I kind of oversee them and try to support them so they can have the resources needed to provide just amazing experiences for young people and the families that they serve. So, and then the other layer to that is just being an administrator on campus. Gosh, we have 2,200 kids on campus.
Wow.
Yeah, so we represent a lot of families, and some families they might come to campus experiencing the highest of highs and others the lowest of lows. A lot of different socioeconomic backgrounds make up our community, so it's a special community. I was at Linfield Christian prior, which is in Temecula, and that demographic was different than where I am now. Both were amazing places, but at the same time, I appreciate the diversity that Marietta Mesa provides me. Being able to connect with and bring value to just the different families and things that they're going through, not necessarily just skin color, but just the life situations that happens at times. So because of my own background and things that I've been through, it gives me such value and a sense of purpose to be able to help shepherd young people and families as life hits, whether it's we're celebrating a high moment or we're mourning a moment of lows. So,
And you've shared with me in the past about just how you've taken sports and used that as life lessons for some of the kids.
Yeah, my favorite quote is from Nelson Mandela. And I'm gonna probably butcher it, but the quote goes something that like, sports speaks life to our young people in a language that they understand. Separate than politics, separate than government, sports truly simplistically communicates to young people. I show up, the work I put in will be the rewards that I get out. And at their age and what they can consume and understand, they don't get much else. I was having a conversation with my son yesterday. We were driving to the Laker game, and I asked him a question, and I said, "Hey, baseball, football, basketball. Choose a sport. You have to be a professional athlete. Which one would you be?" And he said baseball, and I'm like, "Well, why baseball?" He said, "Well, because they have the biggest contracts." Kid was about money.
He's smart, yeah. Well,
Right?
hey,
And I told him, I said, "Listen, son. Money isn't everything. You have to find your purpose and what truly makes you happy. After $100 million, it doesn't matter if you have 250. Are you happy?" He was like, "Yeah, but Dad, if I'm good enough to be a baseball player, that means I spent a lot of time and dedication doing it, which means I probably like what I'm doing." Right? So he at 10, he can't communicate politics or much else.
Right.
But he understands the process of work ethic and athletics and what that might mean. So I've spent my life kind of shepherding in that way a little bit.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Nice. So poetry with purpose.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So Poetry with Purpose, I started that pre-COVID. And at the time, I've always been a writer, but at the time, I felt like our community, we don't celebrate the arts. How do you do that well? And I've always kind of been a writer, and I wanted to figure out a way to support educators and celebrate, right? So I have to back up to tell that story.
Okay.
So one of my foundational beliefs is a quote from Aristotle: educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all, right? Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. So, however, education doesn't always tell that story. It doesn't emphasize. It's the benchmarks. What did you score on your test and different things like that. And sometimes we fail to realize, and not just education, but humanity, that sometimes we check boxes versus check on people.
Yeah.
And
It's not always the heart.
right, not always the heart. And it's so important to understand, if I have a campus, or if a teacher or educator, if you have a campus of 2,000 students, not all of them are arriving emotionally well, physically well. A lot of things are happening, a lot of storms they're facing. So, because that's why I went into education, they say what makes your heart breaks your heart. And my upbringing has truly shaped what I'm doing now. I overcame adversity and things of that nature. So when I walk my campus every day, or when I am fulfilling my purpose daily, I want to feel like I have a bunch of other advocates with me who is trying to save children and make healthier communities one day at a time. And so when I don't see that, I really do want to wave that flag. I want to be that person to, get a tribe or get a troop to say, hey, the grades are going to come. The scholastic excellence are going to come, but first, let's just make sure that a child is well. And when I got to year 17 of education, I wanted to do more than what I was seeing just on my campus. And so that's where my advocacy started with the nonprofit, Poetry with Purpose, because I wanted to try to figure out a way how I can raise funds and celebrate the arts. It seems like a lot of times when people say like, hey, I want to get a new career, or I don't know what I want to do in life. And it's like, okay, well, what are you passionate about? What are you good at? And that's kind of where it started. How can I help educators? How can I celebrate educators that are doing things well? But then also, how can I repurpose, reemphasize, and refocus educators who need a shifting of the lens? And so when I'm trying to figure this out, I'm like, well, I'm a poet. I like writing. Let me start an event where the funds go and support education, ultimately supporting young people, ultimately supporting our communities. But then also, I asked myself, okay, well, what can I use? And it was poetry. And what I didn't know, that's where I met you, is how many people were starving for such an environment, because it is so therapeutic. The messages I get about the home, the safety net. I think poetry already offers us a gift of exploring our emotions in a way that little else does. Like, right, men normally don't have diaries, right? Men normally don't have intimate conversations with each other. And I think one of the strongest things that we can do is be honest with ourselves, really try to process how we're feeling. Hollywood rarely tell those stories of men who are very in tune with who they are emotionally, right? And here is an interesting dichotomy to that, is that Hollywood's going to tell you the story of men, be strong, be real tough.
Society.
Right? Like, I know that you're hurt, but don't feel it. Well, men who don't feel things in life don't feel things in their home. And men who don't feel things in their home create broken homes, right? So poetry offers that gift for us to have like an aha moment and say, wait a minute. I need to have a different perspective. I need to really be able to process what I'm thinking and feeling, do it in a healthy way. And that ecosystem, which I really wasn't aware of then, but now I realize that ecosystem has been created with poetry, with purpose, and it's life-giving. It's been an amazing experience and journey.
It is. Yeah, I 100% agree that, I don't know about you, but I wasn't taught to listen to my emotions, to process them. And I spent years just ignoring them, drinking them away.
Yeah.
And the reason I started writing things was just to be able to process and understand. So,
For sure.
and then to have an outlet to share that
Absolutely.
is
Yeah.
unbelievable. It's like you said, it's an environment you feel safe in,
Yeah.
and kudos to you.
Yeah.
It's a great environment. Everyone come check it out. How often do you do Poetry with Purpose?
It's the third Saturday of every month at Rival Coffee here in town. A great environment. You've been there. The energy, even if you aren't a poet, the energy is very special, right? It's family oriented. I try to say as often as possible. A lot of times people have visions and these dreams that you got to show up perfect, right? Like if you were to ask anybody, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? They're going to tell you a title, but then they're going to tell you the person or entity that is within their prime with that title. Meaning, like, I'm a Laker fan. Like, oh man, Kobe Bryant, I want to be just like Kobe Bryant. When the reality is, I'm telling you, I want to be 81 points Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
Right? The second highest point total in NBA history, Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
I don't mean I want to be rookie Kobe Bryant who airballed 5 times and got
In the
swept
playoff
by
game.
the Utah Jazz.
I saw that.
Right? Yeah. So I say that, like most people, when they say or identify like this is what I want to be in life, really what they're describing is whatever entity or person that is within their prime. And what's so special about Poetry with Purpose is we emphasize the idea that there's no perfection here. When you hear your family, life is about progression, not the perfection that social media or Hollywood tries to sell you, and which is hurting our kids. But I'll digress and go off on a whole tangent if I continue that.
Yeah. No, and it's the journey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what time does it start at Rival
5
Coffee?
to 7.
5 to 7
5 to 7 every third Saturday. Come on out. Yeah, and follow us on IG too and Facebook, Poetry with Purpose, so you can stay up to date with what we're doing.
Absolutely. So you're also a speaker?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So where do you go speak? What do you speak on?
Right. So I speak on emotional intelligence, empathy, education. I alluded to this earlier. So honestly, I didn't know this 10 years ago. Like, I didn't know that I was going to be an entrepreneur and speaking and things like that. I think COVID offered all of us a time to really sit back and analyze things, especially those of us who were in education, but to our country. Like, it was one of the rare times in our country where we're all locked in our own silos and had to process a whole lot. So during this time, COVID was a trigger for me. It was a trauma for me, right? Because there was depression. Our students felt isolated at a rate never seen before.
Off the charts.
Depression, suicide, mental health. Like, COVID was a time where mental health became no longer a taboo.
Mainstream,
yeah. Right? So many funds and resources popped up around COVID. And what's so great is that the conversation is still okay. The reason why it was a trigger for me, in which is that, like, I grew up in an environment that society would call a cult, but really, my belief is that it was a community in inner city Los Angeles that wanted to offer support, right, to its community in a way that wasn't really afforded at that time, especially people of color. So my father was in charge of that group. Fast forward a couple years, I'm in Sandy. I witnessed my sister pass away. I end up in foster care, right? So I just went through this whole journey. And the idea of being isolated, the idea of poverty, the idea of just all these mental anxiety type situations, I saw that in my colleagues. I saw that in my students. And we're going through fires right now. So the idea of fire popped in my head because of what's going on in LA. But the reality is this: if you see someone on fire, you have a choice: put them out or not put them out. So when I was triggered, I'm like, I see what they're going through. It reminds me of my past, but I'm not gonna render help. But what true humanitarian would do that, right? So that's where the book came from. And it started with the book. empathy education, emotional intelligence, trying to, because it's normal. The reason why that topic is so important is because a desensitization happens to every human. For example, I'm about going on year 2 of my marriage, and in your honeymoon stage of dating anyone, it's you look so great and let me fluff this pillow and all these things, right?
Right.
But I remember like after a couple months of being married, I'm off to work and my wife was like, "Oh, the lunch is in the fridge." Where at first it was on the counter with a note, but that's so normal.
Yeah.
In within every aspect, it's normal. Like as an employee, as a colleague, as a boss, as a sibling, it's so normal, the desensitization, right? So we have to remind each other and be intentional with the idea of try to have as much patience and grace and love as you possibly can every single day. And that's where the book started. And so when I started that book and educators got a hold of it, then they wanted me to come speak on these ideas of it, right? Because educators are leaving education at an all-time high, started around COVID. They feel overworked, undervalued, underpaid, like all these things. And so some of the issues that I address within that book and how to relate to young people, educators personalize it to their whole life, right? So now I'm to the point where people are using that book. And what's fascinating, what I didn't realize that would happen was educators are reading that book for their classroom, but then also they're saying, man, that's changing my home life. I thought about my husband. I thought about my child. Can I give this book to my neighbor? And so that's where the keynotes and the workshops and all that started from. Ultimately, I started this podcast saying that I'm a child humanitarian, but somehow it seems like it's been a gateway to some other lanes as well, which I welcome, because at the idea that young people who are loved well become adults who are loved well.
And love well.
Communicate well and love well and all that kind of stuff. So it's really grown into something I really didn't anticipate. But
And what's the name of the book again?
Letters from an Educator, The Child You Didn't See.
And where can we find that?
Oh, you can find that book at, it's called Connected 3030.
Okay.
Connected 3030.
Yeah. Well,
That's good.
yeah. And both my kids were in high school for COVID, and yeah, they both, it really affected them where antisocial, don't want to be around people.
Absolutely.
They both went into counseling after,
Yes, of course.
during and afterwards.
Right.
So absolutely, it was
Right. Because
I hear
the
what you're saying.
world slowed down, and because our world moves so fast, we really don't process things that we're really feeling, believing, seeing, or experiencing. And so when the world pumped its brakes on everything, you have to really just kind of sit in quiet spaces and really think about things that you've experienced before or now, or just processing family dynamics. It's kind of trippy, So
Yeah, well,
that's the mental health part.
yeah. And I think with you saying that, I don't think as a society we process things. We don't put attention on that, hey, it's okay to think about this and see how you feel and how, what's it stirring up inside, which is
100%.
disappointing.
Yeah, 100%. And it's fun. What's funny, because I'm an athletic director, but also, and so I work with adults and coaches, right? But also work with my son. But what you just said triggered a thought that I have with my son, because he's really competitive, and so being competitive can be emotion. But you're talking about emotions, like how do you process your emotions? What happens a lot of times is people don't process their emotions, and then their emotions become decisions and choices. Right? And I think it's so valuable to say, like, I feel angry or sad or I'm down, and realize that that's the beauty of being a human being, right? Because as much if I was to kick you in your knee, you're going to say, ow.
Yeah.
Like, I need to make a healthy decision about the fact that my knee is hurting.
Yeah.
People don't process to that level emotionally. I'm sad. Okay, well, what healthy choice are you going to make through that process? The world sometimes moves too fast where you can't do that. So you get to a situation like COVID, I'm sad, I'm alone, I'm depressed. I just need to, where's the alcohol? Where's the drug, right? Where's the gambling addiction? Where's the porn? Whatever vice that's unhealthy, right? It seems like people are quick to reach that versus saying, no, this is amazing that my body is detecting something and telling me I'm feeling something, because now it means that I need to adjust and adapt
And
the dial a
why,
little
and
bit.
look at why.
Absolutely.
And I think society today says you should always be happy, right? Everything should always be good.
Right.
You can't be sad.
Right.
You can't be, which
Right.
is, like you said, life's all of it.
Right. 100%.
So
Right.
yeah,
100%.
So
Yeah.
I agree with that. Your own publishing company?
Yeah. So that was interesting. Because so I started writing the book, and I was really trying to process what I'm gonna do with it. And I think most commonly people say, like, let me go and get a publisher. Who's going to publish my book and all that. I want to be self-published. And so I was processing that for a little bit, and I was really just kind of sitting, thinking and praying, what am I going to do? What does this book mean? I just knew that I felt inside that I was just supposed to write the book. Then I really came to the understanding, and I really processed the idea of everything that I just kind of mentioned to you, that my book is a business card in some ways. My book is a message. And because I'm a child humanitarian, by any means necessary, I want to be able to advocate within any vehicle that I can. And so when I realized that some people read or watch a podcast, or, you know what, I just want to wear a t-shirt that says, if you're reading this, I believe in you, right? There's so many ways that people consume information. And so when I realized that I wasn't just an author. I was a message, a movement of my values. And once I realized that, I'm like, oh, okay, so I need to start my own publishing company, so I can produce my own material. And so it's not just written, right? Like I said, now I've ventured to the point where I'm doing the podcast, I'm doing the keynotes, the workshops. Yes, I have digital stuff on the website too for courses and things like that. But I realized just the material that I was creating was greater than who's a publisher that's going to print. So that's kind of how it evolved to that.
Yeah. And do people come to you then and say, hey, I've got this material. Can you help me?
Yes.
So how do you go about helping people with that?
This won't be a really great answer, but because I have a published company and I've been through this experience, and I'm such a giver anyway, like I lead with my heart in everything that I do. When people say, hey, I have a publishing company, I just say, hey, like I haven't really published anyone officially. I don't want to speak into the future, but right now I don't have a plan to. But I help them publish theirs. I edit theirs. I do. I give them the whole A to Z just because that's the type of person that I am.
Right.
So yeah.
All right, we'll talk. I got some ideas.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Sports guy.
Yes, big time.
Basketball the favorite?
I would say that basketball is my favorite, right? That's what I fell in love with. I was actually better at track and field. But it was one of those, it was very similar to the conversation that I had with my son. I got to the point where I only enjoyed winning when it came to track, and I didn't enjoy training, and I realized that wasn't really a reason to do it. Whereas in basketball, I've gotten my butt kicked on many a days. I've done well on many a days, but I always enjoyed getting up and fighting and going through that struggle again to grow. And so so I fell in love with the sport. I was fortunate enough to play in college, high school, coach it as well. I still wish I can coach it, but as an administrator, they don't allow me to do that. But yeah, it's a good sport.
And a little tidbit I got from you from talking to your dad. It's kind of in the blood, right? Your dad was
so I
professional basketball player.
I think it was chosen for me. My dad, he was a big-time high school basketball player, went to college, and then got drafted in 77, maybe it was 75, along with Bill Walton, who recently passed away, rest his soul. But yeah, he got drafted to the Blazers with Bill Walton in 75.
Yeah.
Which I really didn't get an opportunity. Like, right, I think every young person who try to up their dad, but I think especially men, we want to learn, right, about the greatness and steal whatever gifts we can from our fathers. I think it's a rite of passage. And my dad died when I was so young at 9, so I never got to experience that part of it, you know.
Yeah.
But I think what's so cool about life, especially my life, is that regardless of what happens to you, it all still serves a purpose. And I think my journey really was uniquely kind of woven for me. Even the loss of my father as a young age still has birthed a passion, right? They say like, I think this is true for a lot of advocates. I think that not true for everybody who go through storms, but I do think when you think about the big names, MLK, Nelson Mandela, even the person you know who has gone through some sort of sexual trauma is now a part of some nonprofit doing advocacy work, right? I think that beautiful people come from painful stories.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you really think about the people that our country remembers, they come from those type of experiences. So what's so cool, like now that I can say what's so cool is that like I didn't grow up with my father, huge basketball player and experience, and I could have learned a lot. But what was so interesting, I remember at my very lowest time in college, I broke my ankle. I was at a time, and I was great college, Division III, Linfield University in Oregon. But in my mind, I'm like, man, I would be somewhere else if my dad was here. I would be like at a Division I and doing all these kind of things. And I remember I was thinking about that night. And I remember I went to sleep that night, and I had a dream that my dad was in a dream. And I hit a game-winning shot. I walked off the court, and I remember when I woke up, that's all I remember. I walked off the court, I woke up, and I was crying. I'm like, man, my dad is with me, right? Like, regardless of where I am. But then, this is crazy. Ready for this? True story. I go to the multicultural director's office that morning, and he's been bugging me for a while to come by his office. And so I finally go by there and say, John, finally came by my office. This package came for you a couple of weeks ago. I didn't need it a couple weeks ago, whatever that package was. And I'm like, what is it? He's like, oh, I don't know. Open it up and see. So I open it up, and it's first a letter from someone who went to school with my dad. And I knew nothing. Up until this point, I knew nothing about my dad's basketball experience. And it said, hey, John, I went to school with your dad over at Pacific University. Want to let you know that he was an amazing man. And I'll never forget the time that we were in the Commons and he disrespected, a young lady disrespected him. And he could have returned that same attitude and energy, and he didn't. He used it with such grace and maturity. He was always a leader on our campus, and I want you to know that that's the type of person your dad was. I needed that because a week later, I actually went off on another college student for no reason because I was frustrated because of my ankle. So I needed that note. And then, so that was sign number 2. Sign number 3 was I start reading all the articles. Oregonian, LA Times, his college newspaper articles. And it's like, Broussard scored this. Broussard was a rookie with Bill Walton, all this kind of stuff. And so for me, as a 20-year-old kid, first time ever seeing some of the achievements that his dad did, like, I'm like, my knees, I'm crying, I'm like, man. And then I'm looking at one of the pictures, and it says Broussard soars through 2 defenders for 2 points. And I look at the picture, and he's wearing number 30. I started playing basketball in 8th grade. The only jersey I've ever put on was number 30.
Get out.
My dad, number 30. And I was 20 years old when I saw that picture. So now everything that I do is 30. And me being a faith-based person, there's a scripture in Philippians that says, walk by faith, not by sight. And I'm a faith-based person, and I don't do altar calls with the way that I live, but I absolutely am so proud of my belief. But I use 30-30 almost in resemblance to that verse of, listen, don't always think life is about the storm that you see versus the flower and the possibility that's birthed when that storm passes, right? And so that's what that moment taught me, and I've really never questioned anything else. And so now I look at life in such beautiful ways, and I would prefer my heart to be conditioned the way it is, And I think it's conditioned the way it is because of some of the traumas that I faced.
Yeah. Walk through the fire.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Makes you stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Family guy too,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Married,
Yes.
10-year-old. I
Yes.
mean, you're obviously being a great role model for him.
Yeah.
What are some words of wisdom you can give to people who are struggling with that, right? Family's not always easy. We don't always process the things that happen to us.
Yeah.
What are
That's a loaded question. So I want to try to restate what you asked. So what advice would I give to someone who's going through family adversity?
Yeah. Yes.
That's very tough, honestly, because I really do believe that just because someone is family or blood doesn't mean that they should have access to you. Which I don't want anyone to confuse the idea of I'm cutting someone off or loving them. I don't believe that, and it can be family or any relationship, but if anyone calls you anxiety, mental stress, or abuse, I don't think that we're called to be around that. We can love people from a distance, you know? And I'm for it. And I have such an amazing family, and I'm glad that I don't have to subscribe to that currently. But I think I give that advice most often to people who go through breakups, and they're still finding a way to support. Oh, they need me to show up for them in this way, or they need me to pay for that. And I'm like, you know what? This world is big enough, and my God is big enough where he doesn't need you to help a family member or ex-relationship at the cost of you being in pain. He doesn't need you to do that. He can send somebody else to take care of that person. You need to make sure that you're mentally healthy, that you have peace, that you're able to be well emotionally and things inside, you know? And so I think the family dynamic is very similar to that. That we should really try to process it through a lens of, you know what, I need to be able to say that I'm doing everything I can to love whomever it is. And if for some reason that person isn't healthy enough to return that, then obviously that's a sign where, you know, space needs to be created.
You're a wise man.
I don't know about that.
So all the different areas that you work in, right? So say a student sees this, or a parent of one of your students, how can they get a hold of you to say, oh, hey, can we talk about something or whatever?
Yeah.
And then
yeah,
we'll touch on, you know, your publishing and that, and then Poetry of Purpose. Let's
100%.
how you get a hold of you in the different places.
So, if it's school related, they can email me. Or they can come to campus, Mary de Mesa High School. It's the best high school in the Valley. You definitely want to come.
Go Rams?
Yeah, go Rams. Absolutely. And we did actually just win CIF for football too.
Nice.
Yeah, shout out my coach Oscar. He's amazing. So that's school related. But other than that, IG is John Broussard 3030. Facebook's John Broussard 3030. The website is there as well, Connected 3030. So those are the different avenues where they can be able to reach out.
All right. And then every third Saturday?
Yeah, every third Saturday. Absolutely. Yeah, come
Poetry
and share, experience, and feel the vibe of.
Or just take it in
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
at first, right?
Real people. I tell people all the time, you don't necessarily have to be a poet to come be a part of something that feels anti-society at times because there's so much. Society looks like social media at times. You know, you hear Facebook, but I call it fake book because people only show what they want to show.
Yeah.
Whereas Poetry with Purpose, like, it's real people. You know, like, we all feel things, hear things. Come be healed. Come heal someone else and bring value to the world.
Man, I've heard some powerful words there that
100%.
hit you deep.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
yeah.
man, thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you.
Yep.
I look up to you, man.
Well, I don't know
You
about
do a
that.
great
Only 'cause
job.
I'm tall.
It's, you know, so thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Any last words you want to share? Or?
No, I appreciate you.
All right.
Honestly, I appreciate what you're doing,
Yeah.
what you're doing in the community. So I hope it goes well.
I appreciate you, man. I think the world needs a voice like yours, and anything I can do to help, man, I'm gonna be there. So
Awesome.
thanks for being here. And as always, water always wins. See ya.
Thanks, guys.